Oh, good morning. Welcome to the second hour of Lovebabz Love Talk. I'm Babs Rose Ivy. I'm delighted. I got Sharmont Influence Little, the inaugural New Haven Poet Laureate. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Babs. I'm beautiful. I can't complain at all.
You look great. I'm glad you moved a little bit so it didn't look like you was in the witness protection program.
Yeah, I had to turn on some lights, and where I'm normally sitting in my office in the dark, no lights. This is my writing space. So
Oh, I can appreciate that. And it looks like a good writing space at that.
yes, thank you.
So tell me a little bit about you. Are you a New Havener? Are you born and raised in New Haven, or are you from other parts?
No, ma'am. I was born in Yale New Haven Hospital. I was born in Franklin Street. Well, the original Franklin Street projects, the original Farnham Court, has been changed twice. Um, uh, I moved away for a little while. My father was part owner and worker for Popeye's Chicken, so we opened up a bunch of stores around Connecticut. So we worked. I lived up in the Hartford area for a couple years. Then I came back home and ended up graduating high school in Hamden, but I've been a resident of New Haven for the rest of the time.
Hmm. And you're a nurse by calling, right?
Yes, ma'am. Because of my background in my family, even from my grandmother was known to feed and take care of people in the whole community. I watched her do that. Then I watched my dad do it from behind the counter of Popeyes, taking care of people. So it's kind of embedded in me to be for the community. I moved up the ranks. I just decided in my early 30s that I wanted to be a nurse. I was a milieu counselor and PCA for Yale Psych Hospital, and then I went to go be a nurse at that time. So yeah. But a, I'm a community nurse, so I don't work on units. I work in the community. I go home to home doing wound care for people and trying to keep them out of the hospital and education and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, some days I'm talking to people all day, and some days I got my hand in wounds all day. So
Ooh, that sounds like a lot. That sounds like a lot. And so you're married and you have how many children? Tell me about your
two.
wife and children.
Uh, I've been with my wife since I was 16 years old.
Oh my, how
Um,
old are you now?
I'm 48.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, we were high school sweethearts. It was funny because my dad is an intricate part of my life. So um, at a young age, I was dating older women, and my dad was like, "Nah, I can't have this." So he said, "I got somebody I want you to meet." There's actually a poem on YouTube of my father's story that I did, but he said, "I got somebody I want you to meet," and he introduced me to her. And from that point on, she went from my girlfriend to my wife. I have two beautiful girls, 23 and 19. Um,
Wow. So they're
yeah,
grown.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So yeah, it's beautiful. Being a girl dad is, whew, it shows you how much of a hypocrite you may have been in your life.
Okay, you got to give me a little more than that. I think I know what you mean, but give us a little
I
something, a
mean,
little bit more.
you, coming up in the '90s and stuff like that, and raised in the lady in the '80s and in the '90s. What they labeled as toxic masculinity with men, the way men treated women, and having um, trying to have multiple women. Even though I was married at 20, I went through my ups and downs in life with first of all being with the same young lady for so long. It made me when I was younger, it made me feel like that I was missing out on other things. So there was some indiscretions and stuff like that. But then when you have daughters, you realize uh nah, I don't want that to happen to my girls. Like, you don't want that type of thing to happen and go out. So it kind of makes you a hypocrite from the aspect of your mindset at that point in time, and now your mindset for your daughters, because you don't want the same thing that you did for your daughters.
Mm.
So it's almost like God has a way of punishing you and setting you straight. Um, because I mean, you would go fist to cuff for something to happen to your daughters, but you don't want nobody to say nothing to you about the dirt you done did. Like, so yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
That's a you know what, but that's a maturity. That's a growth. I would call that a growth if you can recognize that, right? Like if you could
Mm.
see that.
Yes,
I think
ma'am.
what do the kids call it? A stitch? That's a stitch, a groove, whatever. Yeah, that's a thing. So when did you come to poetry?
Again, my dad started me when I was first of all, when I refer to my dad, I want to make it clear because people from the city may know me. And when I refer to my dad, I'm talking about Joseph Springfield. I'm talking about the man my mother married, who was my dad from the age of 12. Um, uh, he was a Mason, a uh, very intelligent man. He he wouldn't let me go outside during the week during school time. For him, school time was education time. I read the dictionary and things of that nature. Had tests with him in school. I was able to go outside on Saturday and Sunday. It wasn't like he was extremely strict. And I was able to go outside and do things on the weekend. He gave me whatever I wanted. If I didn't have it within that week, I had it within that month. Um, but he was very big on education. And then to add to that, I had a teacher named Mrs. Vernon in Nathan Hale. I was bused from Franklin Street Projects to Nathan Hale School in East Haven as of the integration type of bus programming thing that and this lady would come into the projects and pick me up and take me to her house. She was my English teacher. And I kind of fell in love with words from those two situations. And then I would write poetry and stuff like that off and on. But remember, when I was coming up, um, for a young black male to talk about he does poetry in school, you was a punk, amongst other words they will call you. So it wasn't like I can be like, yeah, I'm a poet like you can now coming up in school. Now you couldn't do that then because you would be called all kind of things. You would be called gay. You would be called whatever, and you would be fighting because they would think you soft. So I had to kind of be one way out in the street when I'm with my friends, and then come home and be this a studious young man reading books and writing poetry.
Wow. So so when did you do your first public slam reading sharing of your talent?
The New Haven Public Library, there was a lady by the name of Aisatu. Years ago, she used to run out of the New Haven Public Library downtown, the main branch downtown, and that's where I met Bob Bidon. I met Bob there, and that was my first open mic experience. And then from that point, there was a time where Sandra's was around the corner on State Street, and Sandra's had an open mic at that time too, and that's where I met Jay Sun and Breon Baines and the rest of them that were here, and that started me on my journey of spoken word and performance poetry.
Mm-hmm. And so, what is it about spoken word and performance poetry that you like? Like, what? I mean, everybody's got a thing that speaks to them. What is it about this medium that has captured your spirit?
The fact that it's free and when you read poetry, tomorrow literal poetry, academia poetry is normally it's a wonderful art, but it's set within bounds. And for so long, spoken word poetry was not respected as actual poetry when it is. The special thing about spoken word poetry that is based out of free write, and we use all the poetic tools to paint that actual picture. We use double entendres, metaphors, so forth and so on to paint the picture. And what I love about it is it's us, like it's me. I speak with my hands and my body, and you can see everything that I'm going through from my facial expressions, the influx in my voice. There's no monotone. So all these different tools is what makes spoken word so attractive to me, and gave me an actual voice. All the things that my dad had me reading, and I was in class challenging teachers and challenging things like that. Now I have an actual voice that I can talk about those things, and I can use my body and not be called overly aggressive because I'm a young black man using my body, being 6'2". I've always been a big dude, being 6'2" and over 300 pounds. I'm able to just be me.
Wow. Okay. So you get introduced to this medium, and then you start to thrive in it.
Well, it took some time. As as beautiful as my career looks now, that's how much I struggled early on. This is 20 years in the making. Uh, 20 years in the making of traveling. I try to tell all young poets, they were like, well, how did you get to this space? How did you do this? Well, I did it by due diligence, blood, sweat, tears, the part that people don't want to know in poetry, long nights, crying over poems, dealing with your trauma and bringing these things out, and then hitting the road and continue to open up those cuts all the time and getting it out until you're able to deal with it all across the country. I mean, there was times that I would say, "Oh, I want to get known. I want people to know who I am in Virginia." So we would ride to Virginia and have just enough money to get to get back into Connecticut with the enough money for the last toll to get back into Connecticut, come back broke, just
Ooh.
so have my name known so people would know who Influence was. That's why slam poetry, which is the competitive part of spoken word, was so important and intricate in my career.
So when did you discover slam poetry? Because I like a lot of people came to slam poetry like way before death slam poetry, like way
Right.
before that. Because I'm 60, so I remember spoken word in places and spaces where people were just starting to sort of get a vibe for, like the New Eurekan and places like that. Like people were just starting to get a vibe for this medium. It was new, it was exciting. I don't think it was terribly new because I think people were always sort of I mean, Gil Scott Heron, all these other cats was always the last poets. They was always, out there performing this stuff, but it didn't come personal until many years later. So what is it about slam? Because that is a very specific kind of performance that you like. Do you like the competition aspect of it? I mean.
Um, in some cases, it's a double-edged sword because at one point you teach young people that the poetry is about you, and then on the other hand, you're letting other people, random people, judge your work and tell you how good they think it is, or 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 or
Ah.
or how it touched them. Slam was well. To answer your first question, when I came into slam, it was because of what's happening on the 15th on Monday at the Peabody Museum. The uh, Now the Annette Lewis Dr. Martin Luther King Environmental Poetry Slam. That's where I first fell in love with slam because we had at that time I was a new poet, not even close to being ready. But my friend Qualo, my friend Conscious, and Yaba Ibo Mandingo, and Queen Sheba, and all of them were coming down and they were performing, and I wanted to get involved in it. And Mrs. Annette Lewis would never, because it was invitational. So Mr. Annette Lewis would never let me in at that time. And I was like, man, I'm out here performing. I'm good enough. Not knowing that if I would have gotten that set, I'd embarrass myself and got completely slaughtered by the caliber of poets that was on stage at that time. But I fell in love with it. And after a while, I kept practicing, kept getting better, kept letting myself be seen to where rest in peace, when Miss Lewis passed away, and Goma picked up the mantle and kept it going. And I got a phone call from him, and we started doing it then. But I was a 5 to 6 time member of the Verbal Slap Slam team, which I am now the coach of. And I picked up the mantle now to give younger poets and newer poets the opportunity to slam and get known internationally. Because that's how I made my name. I made my name through slam. I made my name through winning slams, being part of the Verbal Slap Slam team, going from, because every year nationals used to move. So it will be in New Orleans one year, North Carolina this year. And that's how we got our name to be known amongst other poets that Connecticut really got some poets, really got some work down here. So slam was really intricate in that aspect.
And do we does Connecticut have a strong poetry community?
So we have a strong poetry community, but we don't have, it can be stronger, but we don't have a strong slam community.
Mm.
So I'm trying to bring Connecticut is, when I was coming up, Connecticut was a very revolutionary type poet base, right? Now it's a combination of everything from revolutionary to emotional to PTSD trauma to all kind of things now. But the slam aspect of I'm trying to refurbish. So you have a handful of poets that are really chasing slam real hard, like some of the ones that made the team. So you got Goddess Tamani Rain, you have Phil Alexander, you have Yexandra goes by Yex from here in New Haven.
Yeah, we
You
love
have
Yex. I
yes,
love when I
so
see her.
yeah, so Yex is on the team. Also, my longtime partner with Verbal Slap, Michael Chief Peterson, who was the New Britain Poet Laureate uh, for some time. So we have those. So the mantle is back up, and you have another team. Nationals is no more, but there's another poetry venue called Southern Fried, and that moves around too. But this is how we know that Connecticut have good poets. That is a Southern-based competition, slam competition, where about 40 or 50 teams converge from the South to compete. Well, we were going down there in the South in nationals, and we were laying the words down on stage to where they approached us and was like, yo, y'all pretty good. Like, why don't y'all try coming out to Southern Fried? Connecticut was the furthest north they had came to to even invite it down there. So we went down there, and our first outgoing, we we missed final stage by 1/10 of a point. So we went out there and we showed out down there again. So yeah, so they keep inviting us back.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So it's a dream, Sharmont, to have a slam here in Connecticut on that level, or
I would love to. So I do a slam every year called the Underground Poetry Slam. Is I created it through my LLC. It's called the Underground. I put up $1,000 for individual poets. I put up $1,000 of my own money, and I call poets from all over the East Coast. So and we have some of the top poets come down and battle for the money. So that's probably the biggest slam outside of the MLK slam that we have in this area. And would I like it to be bigger? Absolutely.
mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get more poets further south and other places to come down as well, because that's also invitational, because people pay to come see this, right? So I want to make sure that not only uh, is it fine poetry, I want to make sure it's going to be a good show. So I make sure that it's poets that I have to respect as well, and know that regardless of who wins, it's going to be a dynamite show.
So tell me about so my dear friend bestie Ife Gardine, who does Elm City Lit Fest, looked around the landscape and says, huh, New Haven doesn't have a poet laureate. Why doesn't New Haven have a poet laureate? Now she talked about this for about 2 years, trying to figure out like how do we make this happen, who we need to talk to. And of course, Ife being the force of nature that she is, she just connected the dots, and voila, we have a competition for poet laureate. We have
Right.
a bona fide competition because everywhere we go, New Britain has one, and Hartford has one, and everybody has one. Connecticut has one, everybody has one. I know Marilyn Nelson, who was a Connecticut poet laureate once upon a time. I know the sister from. I mean, there's a lot of folks who have done it from other places, but New Haven just seemed to miss the mark. So we have this competition. A bunch of y'all get together. A bunch of y'all are throw your hat in the ring, and one person rises to the top, and it is you.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what's funny? I have been poking around asking the question of how do we get a poet laureate for New Haven for probably about 2 years. Probably me and Miss Ife was probably doing the same thing, but didn't know each other,
But didn't
because
know
I'm
each
like,
other.
right, because I'm like, all my friends are becoming poet laureate. My man Josh, Urban Nerd out of New London, Frederick Douglass Knows out of Hartford. I mean, all my friends are Chief in New Britain. All my friends are becoming. I'm like, yo, when? How can we get one here or whatever? Then I'm getting a little piece of information here, a little piece of information there. Then all of a sudden, I hear Miss Ife was trying to head up to do it, and I got a message in my inbox saying you need to uh, submit for poet laureate, and I was like, oh, okay. And so uh, I threw my hat in the ring, but I was consulting with some of my friends, and they were telling me they were giving me the support, telling me, you've been doing the poet laureate thing for years on your own, and it was
Mm.
like they kind of was like, yo, you kind of deserve the title, so put your hat in there and go for it. I'm always nervous as when I first met you and we had our conversation in the library and you asked me, did I have a book? And I told you I never thought I was good enough to write a book. And you treated me as a son, a little brother, as you should have. And you was like, what are you talking about now? I've heard about you. You what are you talking about? So what's hinting me starting my journey on writing my book. So again, every time I see you, thank you for that.
Of course. Listen, you have such a compelling story and it's such an inspiration. And young people are looking at you. Like young people are looking at you. I mean, one, you're a nurse. So that, that's his own shine. The fact that you're a married man with grown children and committed to your community, that's another beautiful shine. And now you're the inaugural poet laureate. And I'm seeing you around, I'm seeing you in spaces. I'm seeing you're elevating this poetry, this love for poetry. Like you are literally elevating it in spaces that it wouldn't be in if it wasn't for you.
I mean, I appreciate it. Just like I tell everybody, poetry is I write poetry for me, for my questions, for my concerns, for my doubts, and it just so happens to entertain other people in the process. Um, I don't do it for whatever accolades I get. Um, the most important thing to me about poetry is that my mother, my wife, and my children, my family could walk the city of New Haven, and whenever they enter in and have interactions with anyone, as long as they have nothing bad to say about me and they walk away with something positive, I've already won. For my mother to keep her head high when she walked through, for me to be able to have her sit at the mayor inauguration and me deliver a poetic address and she hear people talking about me at the community center, the Dixwell Q House, and she can walk out proud as a peacock to say that's enough reward for me. Um, period. So
So who do you like? Who do you read? Are you reading poetry? And do you go? I know you go see other poets. Like I know you're probably always checking for other poets. How does that
um,
work for you?
I am a fan of Langston Hughes, of Nikki Giovanni. I am a fan of James Baldwin, which we will be doing the James Baldwin celebration with Miss Ife soon. But I also like today's poets in the variety. One poet that I like is Black Chakra in his style, Talam Asi, which I
I
know
know
I taught
Talam
there.
AC.
Yeah, so I
Yes.
taught the Salam. And some of my favorite poets are local poets, poets that I can call on the phone. That I do call on the phone and be like, listen, I got this poem. What do you think about it? So we're talking about Ayaba Ibo Mandingo. We're talking about Ngoma Hill. So I have those are the poets that I read. I have their books, and those are the poets that I follow. I mean, there's a plethora of other poets that I read, but those are some of my favorites.
Hmm. And so, I mean, this seems like a huge advocation of time and commitment. How do you fit it all in?
um, I got people right now. Shout out to Zanaya and Miss Ife. Shout out to my wife because my schedule is so crazy between being a nurse, um, performing poetry myself, having a being a curator of events, on top of having a clothing line based from my poetry, doing all these things. My schedule's all over the place. So shout out to my wife. She really holds down my schedule. She knows my schedule better than I do, actually. But I just keep going. I can't explain it. Miss Ife first met me. And the first thing she said to me, she said, "Brother, you need somebody to help you." She was like, "Cause I'm, I don't know. I can't explain. I was always told if someone told you how to do it, they never really did it. Um,
Ah.
so I can't explain how I do it. I just know one thing my dad always taught me. He said, "You always stay positive, progressive, and always keep moving. Always keep moving." And so that's what I try to do.
So in this role as the inaugural New Haven Poet Laureate, the first, what do you want to do in this role? And it's a 2 year commitment, 2 year commitment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
What do
it's a
you want to
2 year
do with
commitment.
this?
I want to present. spoken word to youth to give them and people, period, to let them understand that it's an art form that can give you a voice. It's an art form that can inspire. I want to start having venues and shows here in New Haven, so people don't have to say they have to go to New York or they have to go to Boston or somewhere. That's one of my main reasons for wanting to start the venues that I've started, the slams and stuff that I've done here already, including the R&B and poetry show that I do every year called Lyrical Haven, that I put on. Uh, I want to, as Mr. Ife said, I want to set a precedent, and hopefully the next poet laureate can keep some of these things going. Like we're supposed to be able to get City Hall for a poetry venue, and I want to do it bi-monthly because I'm so busy. The time frame I see I could do it is bi-monthly, and I would like that to be a space that the next poet laureate could automatically go into and run the venue and make it their own identity or what have you for the city. So there's an ongoing open mic for the city created by the poet laureates that come after me as well. So that is going to be that title when we get it done and get everything laid out. Is going to call Elm City Flow is the
I love
name that I
it.
have for it, Elm City Flow. So yeah, I just want to elevate poetry in all aspects in education and
Hmm.
entertainment.
So I take it you're going to be at the MLK, Jeanette Lewis, Peabody annual
Environmental
slam
slam, yeah.
thing.
I'm going to be there because two of my teammates. I was supposed to perform in it. Um, Me and two of my other teammates from the older teams, we were supposed to perform. We have pieces that we wrote that we haven't performed as a team, but I didn't have the time to go. I have the pieces in my computer. I sent it to them, but when I realized I had all these other things coming up lined up, I didn't have the time, and that's one thing I'm a little upset about. But I didn't have the time, so I will be there, but I will not be performing. But two of my friends will be Michael Chief Peterson and Abiose Cole will be performing. But I will be there in attendance to cheer on the poets.
I love it. I love it. All right, so you have that. You're working on a book of poetry, a chapbook. What?
It's a book of poetry. It's kind of poetry and like memoir. So certain parts of the book are going to be explaining where that group of poems came from.
Hmm.
Like there's going to be poems about my mother, about family. It's kind of like a small memoir about what that particular poem came from, what my mindset was. So it's going to be very candid. Uh, and hopefully people can grab something from it and learn something, if not just be entertained by the words that's there.
I tell you, I still think hair braiding is probably one of my most favorite poems that I've ever heard done by anybody anywhere in the world. And I
Wow.
like a lot of poetry. I mean, I fancy myself a poet. I've been a poet since I could read and write, but it is one of my most favorite poems because it
Wow.
speaks volumes about culture and blackness and family. It's such a beautifully done poem. And I'm sure every time you do it, people are like, wow, you know.
They are. In some cases, I almost get tired of doing it because no matter where I go in the world, they ask me do braiding hair, whether they see it on YouTube as a video or Instagram or wherever. I'm asked to do it. I love it when the piece came about. It was actually created for Slam, and it was created initially as a group piece between me and Michael Chief Peterson, because we both had something in common. So when you're in a slam team, you grab another member and you be like, okay, what do you have in common that we can write a group piece together? And me and Chief had the fact that we had daughters in common. And so I formulated the base of the piece. He added his pieces. We made it a group piece, which is also a dynamite piece to see me and him perform that together. Um, but then I took it and I took away his pieces and I extended mine and made it strictly about my daughters and how I braided hair. So the whole concept I came up with trying to find out what was my connection with my daughter. So it's also a self-reflection piece to find out when did I have the most pertinent conversations with my daughter? It was when I was doing their hair. And the funny, like I said, the funny story is that I started doing it here because my wife had work days at Budget Rent a Car, and I would have the kids because I work night. So my oldest, I would do her here. We had to go somewhere, so I think I'm doing something. I'm slicking it back, put a little rubber band around and everything, and she says nothing. She about 5. She says nothing. We gets to my wife's job and she's, mommy, look at my hair. I'm like, no, why you didn't say nothing to me at home? Like I could have, if you ain't like. So my wife at that point actually took me and she helped me with my connection with them because she was like, okay, this is how you do a simple braid. This is how you do a simple ponytail, because she's also a cosmetologist besides working for the university. She's a licensed cosmetologist. So she taught me how to braid. And so from that point, it was just, there's videos of me out there with, a clump of sulfate on the back of my hand and I'm parting and so yeah, I still do my daughter's hair to
that
this
is
day.
so Black. I love it. That's just us. That is so us. That's so us. So before I let you go, tell me what inspires you. Where do you take your inspiration from?
Miss Bell, I take my inspiration from life, from people. I take my inspiration really to hope that my people could be better, that we can be better, that we can, that the opportunities. Like if you read a lot of my poetry or you listen to a lot of my poetry, it has a lot to do with our people and our neighborhoods and coming up. My inspiration is the hope that we can be afforded the same opportunities as everyone else without having to jump 30 different hurdles when they only have to jump one. My daughters are inspirations. They've made me change as my outlook on life. Everything from LGBTQ, everything from just being the father. So my inspiration comes from a lot of things: people, family, community. Now you, now you and Miss Ife, because you and Miss Ife are some dynamite sisters. I'm like, yeah, everyone should have an auntie like y'all.
Okay, I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna go with that. So I'm gonna challenge you to write an auntie poem. I need an auntie poem. I need my own auntie poems. I can take tattooed on my back or whatever. I want an auntie poem. You give us an auntie poem. No pressure.
Yes, ma'am.
It has been a pleasure talking to you, Sharmont. I'm so glad you could make time to come on this morning. I am so proud and so delighted that you are the New Haven Inaugural Poet Laureate. It is just what this city needs, and you are such a fine representative. And I'm cheering for you. And as soon as you finish that book, you can come back on the show and we're gonna talk about it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Say hi to everybody at the house. And I'll see you out here in these slam streets.
Yes, ma'am. You will.
All right.
You will.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you
ma'am.
very
God
much.
bless.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. So, our New Haven Poet Lord. Harry, before we go, I have to shout out the links before I go. Can you just give me a few minutes, Harry? Just a few minutes. Only because I needed to January is Stop Trafficking Awareness Month. January is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And I did this last year for the links and they asked me to do it again. So it's a PSA. I'm gonna read it and then I'm gonna go on about my business. Do you know someone who was a victim of human trafficking? Human trafficking is a form of modern day slavery with illegal smuggling and trading of people for forced labor and or sexual and physical abuse. This is a worldwide problem as well. It is a worldwide problem and it's also a problem in Connecticut. Traffickers target people, both boys and girls, who are vulnerable to promises of a better life and forcing them to live and work in unfair and abusive conditions. Many traffickers are well known, living near us and promising and convincing young people and families that their children would have a better life in a new place. Under the United States federal and Connecticut state laws, human trafficking is a crime. It's a crime. So let's work together to protect our children against these horrific crimes. If you are a victim or you know someone who is a victim of human trafficking, or if you would like to learn more about this serious issue in our society, contact Love 146 at 203-772-4420. That's 203-772-4420. We need your help. And y'all enjoy MLK weekend. Take in all the exhibits and celebrations. Be contemplative about those words, and tune in if you want to hear the speeches in their entirety. We will be playing them from 9 to 11 on Monday. So I'll see y'all. Thanks, Harry.